Hey, BookTube, welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. It is time for part two of my prior reads of 2020. And this is the classics edition of that. Okay, so let's see. The only problem with stacking it like that is the. Okay, so first one on this list. Again, this not gonna be in the. This might not be in the order I'm gonna read these. But I decided to read that my next Dickens will be David Copperfield. Unabridged is good. I was told by Kate from Books and Things, or well, not told directly, but in her recommendations videos and videos where she talks about Dickens, she says that to start with Dickens, you probably want to start with Great Expectations and this one, which I've already read Great Expectations last year. I think I read it for Victober actually. So I decided this is the next one I'm gonna read for this whenever I get around to it. And I don't really know much. I think it's about this guy David Copperfield's life. He goes back and forth from being rich and poor, I believe. And of course, if you read Dickens, you know what his stories are like. And Katie recommends reading this one and Great Expectations first because it's written first person. Since Dickens writes so many intriguing characters. The person who wrote this underlined a lot of things. Oh, maybe she underlined the ones that she thinks, how the order that she rates them or something. But so it's like reading in a first person might make it a little bit easier to get into his novels. So I want to read. This is going to be my next one by him. Okay, so next is an even older one, and that is Count of Monte Cristo. This is one I've been trying to read for a long time. It's one of the oldest books on my shelf. Oldest as in I've had it way before we even thought about moving. And I keep attempting to start it, and this time I got pretty far into it. I feel very accomplished that I've gone this far into it. And I want to get even farther into it. It's just a chunker of a book. And it's not always like, the problem with classics is that sometimes because the writing style of older books is a little different, a little more wordy. So it's like it might take a little longer. And not that this is boring. This is actually a really engaging and interesting story. It's a revenge story about this guy, Edmond Dantes, who he's a sailor. He has a really good life. He's going to be promoted by his captain. But due to jealousy on one of his crewmates, Mr. Danglars, and the cousin of his fiancée, he ends up being accused of treason. And this is during the Napoleonic era, during the Napoleonic Wars, and he gets thrown in the Chateau d'If prison, which is a prison on an island. And while he's there, he meets this mysterious old man who gives him an education. And now there's a movie version starring Jim Caviezel, and in that one, the old man teaches him how to sword fight. But I don't think they have that in the book, unless he's going to mention it later. But Edmund escapes the prison, and he is going to get revenge on the people who were responsible for him getting thrown in jail, and creates the identity of the Count of Monte Cristo. So it's very engaging, interesting, and intriguing story that it's very juicy and sensational. I mean, it was considered sensationalism back in the day, and not worthy literature. Not considered literature back then, but now it's considered a classic. And, it's something that I think if it wasn't such a chunky book, that you could study in like or you could just use this book as, just study this book in one semester. I think that would be really interesting. Or like if you were taking a class that was all about this author's works, that'd be interesting. But yeah, it's just the wording and very long. It's over 1,000 pages, and the writing style back then was a little bit different. And once I get back into it and start reading again, then yeah, I will once again keep wanting to. I believe I will once again keep going once I start reading it again and focusing and prioritizing this book. It's just kind of hard because there are other books that are more fast paced and more straight to the point. Okay, so next is an American classic, and that is The Age of Innocence by Edith Wharton. I started collecting Edith Wharton's books. I read one of her novels before, or short. I don't know if it's a novel or short story, novellas or a short story, but I had to study in one of my literature classes in college, and at the time I didn't like it, but rereading it now, I got like a library copy of it, and I actually liked it a little bit more. I mean, I think it helped that we weren't just analyzing or studying it, and I knew what to expect from it. And then that edition comes in a bind-up collection of all of her novellas. But because it was a long book and it was a library book, and as I've said in the past, when I know a library book is due in 2 weeks, I get anxiety, and I'm like, okay, I need to get this finished so I can at least get the library back one of their books instead of having to renew all the books I picked up from the library. And I think that's why sometimes, I think that's part of the reason why there are some books that I end up DNFing and end up not liking, because I think in a small way it's influenced by the pressure and anxiety of knowing that, okay, I have to get this finished so I can eventually return to the library. And I don't want to renew all the books because it's, so I ended up returning that, but I did buy a copy of, I can't get to it, it's up there, a copy of a bind-up of some of the other novellas in that collection. So, and I already read the other one, so I mean, it's like one of these things where it's like, I already read them, so I don't need to buy it. I mean, I might buy it one day because I did like them. So this is one of her novels, and from what I think it's basically about it's a love triangle about these two women. This one younger woman who's in love with this guy and hopes he'll want to marry her, but then there's another woman who shows up that I don't know if she's related to her, like her cousin or sister or something, but this other woman comes into their lives and has this more interesting personality and she's glamorous and all that, and the guy falls in love with her. I really love this edition. I love these editions because it's like, I like how it's still small enough, but it's really beautiful. It's got these beautiful end pages with the roses, and I just love this velvety outside, encasing of the book, encasing of the pages, and the imprinted words of the title and then the lines for the novel. I really like these editions of books. I would love to buy more. But, I mean, this is one of those things where I saw and I was like, ooh, I grabbed this. And plus, it's purple. It's periwinkle. I love periwinkle, the color of periwinkle. It almost matches my shirt, my sweater. I'm wearing a lot of purple today. Okay, so, that one. Okay, next is a modern classic. So I have been slowly accumulating F. Scott Fitzgerald's books because The Great Gatsby is one of my favorite modern classics, and I love the 1920s. It's one of my favorite decades in history. And this is a bind-up of two of his novellas, which I have like a couple of those, or three of those. I have Notes from the Underground combined with The Double, which I did not realize that it was two novellas in one. I have, and now of course the Enid Wharton book I mentioned, but it's not 2 books. It's actually, I think, 3 novels in one, or 3 novellas in one. And then there was another one that I have around here somewhere, other than this one. I believe there's this one, and then I think I have another one. I mean, maybe I don't. Oh, and then I have both Dr. Jekyll, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, and then The Legend of Sleepy Hollow are bind-ups of those authors, the popular story, and then their other stories. So I have quite a few books that are collections of novellas and short stories. Okay, so the next, so here you have This Side of Paradise and The Last Tycoon. I don't know what the premises of these are. I love vintage looking books. Although it is disappointing that this is completely naked. It doesn't even have anything on the cover. But there was no dust jacket. I just grabbed it. So like I just saw the titles, and that was by Fitzgerald. So I was like, oh well. I don't know much about this, but I know, like I said, he writes about the 20s and society at that time, and then I think he also writes about the 30s, because that was the time that he and his wife were living. So, like I said, I don't know what's about. I just know that it's this kind of time, it's the 1920s and possibly the 30s. I'm guessing that maybe it's about the last tycoon is the last richest man, and maybe The Side of Paradise is like how, like, when the world seems like a paradise, like this perfect world, but it's really not. Like it has flaws in it. I don't know. I'm just guessing. Okay, so next is another modern classic, and that is John Steinbeck's East of Eden. This is another one of those ones where I've started this multiple times, but I just haven't finished it. I do like it. I like Steinbeck's writing style. But again, this is a pretty long book. And it's not the most thrilling story. It's about the lives of these guys. And I think it's also kind of a retelling of the Cain and Abel story. Or like it's basically a retelling of a modern retelling of the Book of Genesis. If you're familiar with the Bible, that's the first. I think that's the first collection of quote unquote stories in the Bible. Like Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, Noah, and all that. So, but that doesn't. Of course, that doesn't mean that you wouldn't enjoy this story. If you're not a Christian. Or you don't believe in the Bible or whatever, because there's a lot. I think there's a bit of debate with that when it comes to religion. But I do enjoy this, and I am interested. It's just, again, it's not a lot of action. The plot is slow moving. But it's a little easier to read than, easier to read than Dickens, but still, again, chunky book. Okay, so next is, so this is an author that Kate from Books and Things and Katie from Books and Things introduced me to. And this author has 2 major series. The parliamentary novels, which is about the politics, the government of England back in like Victorian era. And then there is this series, which I still cannot pronounce the name. And it's Anthony Trollope we're talking about. So I finally got all 4. I finally have all 4 of all 6 books in that series. And most of them are in these editions, but some of them are in paperback editions. So I decided to go ahead and start these. I don't know if this is the second one. I'll have to look it up, make sure this one is the second one. So Barchester Towers might be the second one. I might need to start that one instead after I read. So the first book is The Warden. Although I am told that you, I think I remember saying that this one is like a prequel, so you don't necessarily have to read it, or it's not as good. So Barchester Towers might be the second one, and Dr. Thorne might be the third one. I can't remember, but I don't actually really know a lot about this book to really tell you guys what's about. It just Katie makes it sound so engaging and interesting, and I'm always up for trying new authors. And it was really frustrating because apparently he's not like Dickens or Jane Austen where he's really popular in the US, so my bookstores did not have any of his books. I just got lucky with getting these, or getting like a paperback edition of some of his other books. But I was very frustrated. But then I saw these and I got really excited. But I like these. They're vintage looking. I love vintage cover. I love books that look vintage. I don't know why. I've always been a fan of vintage looking books. Like I said, I don't know if Dr. Thorne is the second one or not. If it's the second one, then I will read Dr. Thorne. But Barchester Towers might be the second one, and that one's up there as a paperback version. So I'll have to look that up. But yeah, so if Dr. Thorne is the second one, I'll read Dr. Thorne next. I have to look, double check on that though. Okay, now that's all those. Next is, let me refer to my list. Okay, sorry, I just gotta refer to my list again. Okay, so next. Okay, alright. Okay, so yep, I got those. I'm good. I got them in order. Just double checking, make sure I have them in order. Next is another one, once again, that I started to read, but then I got sidetracked by other shiny new books and books that were more like thrilling, and had more of a exciting plot. But that is Middlemarch by George Eliot. And this is about the lives of the town of Middlemarch. And about the residents, and like it starts with two sisters, and one of them is one of those types of people that she knows her own mind. She's a very strong woman, very confident, very educated, wants to marry someone that is learned, and she thinks she knows who she should marry, but everyone else keeps telling her you don't. You think that this guy is right for you, but you don't, and I hate to say it, but I think the other people were right. And then you have her sister, who's a little more all about society and getting married and stuff, and she's sweet and, but a little vain at times. And then you have several other characters. Like I said, the problem with me starting these books and then taking really long breaks in between reading each section of the book is I forget things and I don't remember what the rest of the book is about. But I know you experience a lot of other people's lives, and they're all kind of in this one town, and they're all kind of intertwined and interlinked. Not just that they all live in Middlemarch, but they're all somehow, like, I think, linked together in other ways. So I'm on chapter 20. I want to say 28 or 38. I don't know whatever Roman numeral XXVII, 3 I's, means. I feel like that. I always have to look up Roman numerals when books that have Roman numerals for chapters. When it gets past X, the X Roman, starting with the X Roman numeral, then I have to start checking. So I gotta start reading that one as well. And then next is another modern one, and I don't know if I'll save this for October or not, but The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson. I've heard a lot about this. I believe there was a movie version, but there's also a TV show version on Netflix, and I believe the movie version was more accurate. If the movie version is what this book is based on, or I mean, or if the movie version is what is what what the book or the movie, like, you know what I mean. But I think it's the one starring Liam Neeson. Catherine Zeta-Jones, I believe, is in it. It was a movie that I believe came out in the 90s or early 2000s. I think I have to look it up. Like I'll Google it or something. But this doctor is trying to find. It's a similar story to Rose Red by Stephen King. The screenplay is by Stephen King. He brings these 4 people that are psychics to this haunted house, and it's an experiment or something. And I believe one of the women he brings with him is connected to the spirit of the woman that was murdered in the house, the wife of the guy who owned the house. And I believe they also kind of made fun of that in Scary Movie 2. I think they made fun of the haunting. Well, although the movie's called The Haunting, I believe. I'll look it up. I'll Google search it. But yeah, and it doesn't look that long. It looks pretty short. And I don't know if I'll save it for October or just start reading it in the fall or just read it now. I mean, although it being a haunted house, it feels like a fall read, an autumn read. There I go again. It's such a hard habit to break to say the word fall because I prefer autumn. Sounds nicer, but for the longest time, I always said fall, and I never really thought, oh, I like the sound of the word autumn better. So I'm always saying the word fall. It's just a hard habit to break. I still am doing it, but autumn, it feels like an autumn read. If not in October, at least in September. Because I do Victober and October. I started doing Victober, and I did it last year, and I actually committed to it. So I want to do it again this year. So I don't want to not commit to it. I want to commit to it again. Okay, so next is... Okay, so once again. Okay, next is... So, this is one of the ones I mentioned that is a bind-up of Lifetime Library. I have to look that up because I like these editions. Lifetime Library editions. This is one of the bind-ups I got that I mentioned when I was talking about Edith Wharton. And, actually, no, I was talking about my collection, my edition of This Side of Paradise and Last Tycoon. I mentioned that this is one of the other ones, collections. I had never read, I was familiar with the novel version of Sleepy Hollow. I had seen a play version of it, and I did hear that the Tim Burton movie did take liberties a little bit. And the Tim Burton movie is definitely more interesting, but I'm glad I read the original legend. I thought there were things I was disappointed by, but I still liked it. And I'm still glad I read it. But this also includes other stories, and one of his other more famous, Washington Ivory's other more famous stories, is Rip Van Winkle. And I think it's basically about a guy who wakes up in the future or something, but he's immortal, or something like that. And I decided I'm going to read that one next from this collection. And that's all I can say about that. I don't know when I'm going to read it, but I'm going to read it. Okay, next is another chunker. It's even bigger in size than the Count of Monte Cristo, and that is War and Peace. So I am participating in the Classics Community Readathon that Lucy the Reader created. It is basically a readathon where you read classics all year. And she doesn't expect you to read just classics, but she wants BookTube to be more aware of classics, which, yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. There's not enough classic readers. And, so I wanted to read, and she also has it where you can buddy read classics with people, or group buddy read classics, There is a group that has decided to read War and Peace, but they're waiting until next month to read it. So I think I might start it because obviously I have already read a little bit of it so far, and I did really like it. But again, it's even bigger than Count of Monte Cristo. I don't know if it's bigger than like Gone with the Wind or It by Stephen King, but it's that's huge. But the writing style's not that hard. I mean, it's actually it's really the writing style is really not that challenging to read. I'm on part 2 apparently. And I think it's set during the Russian Revolution. Oh no, it's the Napoleonic era. Oh, I'm reading. So again, I mean, I think I already knew this, but I had forgotten. But I'm reading quite a few books. I have a lot of books actually with the Napoleonic Wars. I think even Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell are set during the Napoleonic era. Oh my God! I think this is. Oh my God! Yes, I think this is the same translation that I was just watching while I was preparing to film this video. I had Steve Donahue's video playing of he goes to this used bookstore all the time called the Brattle in Boston. It's not called Brattle in Boston, but he lives in Boston, and his used bookstore thing I always goes to is called the Brattle, and it's a really, by the sound of it sounds like a really good used bookstore, and I think this translation might be the one he bought. The Anthony Briggs' translation. Oh, and it says accessible prose, so that's probably why it's so easy for me to read. So yeah, that would be really cool if it's that translation, because I did not know what translation I had. But I want to say he said Anthony Briggs. So that's really cool. I did not even realize that that's the one I had. But this is a Penguin Classics edition, so I'm going to start this again. Okay, so, next is actually a play. So back around October, I was looking for more Victorian literature to read, and I came across this one at Gibbons, which is a collection of plays. And I remember hearing this, the first time I heard this playwright's name was actually in the musical Thoroughly Modern Millie, which is a great musical, by the way, also set in the 20s, I believe. So of course you know that was going to get my attention. And it's, this woman, this young farm girl from the Midwest. She decides to go to the big city of New York. She wants to become rich and famous. And she stays at this boarding house, and the woman running it is, like everybody else there, had big dreams and wanted to be very famous and successful, and she wanted to be an actress. And she has 2 songs, and one of her songs is her telling. Well, I think the second one is just basically a reprise of this first song. She's like, talking about imagine me as a star, I could have been great, and blah blah blah, and I'm stuck here, and she mentions like imagine me being in one of Ibsen's plays. And that was actually the first time I heard Ibsen, and I remembered it, seeing it at Gibbons. So I decided to buy it because I'm trying to grow my classics collection and read, and I want to read other classic authors or playwright in this case, not just the popular ones like Dickens and Austen or Tolstoy and Dostoevsky. I want to try other ones, and I gotta clean this. I can see the dust on my laptop. I need to wipe it down. But So The Dollhouse is the first one, and I just went ahead and started with that one, and I don't know much about it. It does give a bit of a, and apparently it scandalized the Victorian world, and it's about a married couple, and I believe the husband feels like his wife spends too much money, and he's concerned about her money spending habits, which apparently I can relate to because I'm not very good with. Can be a little careless with money too. It's not like I buy like big stuff. I just waste my money on books, which I know it's not, which I know blasphemous because to me, to all of us booktubers, it's not a waste, but it does add up in the end. But anyway, so I think that's what that's about. It's like a married couple, and the husband feels like his wife spends too much money or something. Okay, next is, okay, so this is my first D.H. Lawrence. I saw this at the book at Givens, and then recently at another used bookstore, at the new used bookstore in Southern Pines. I can't remember what it's called now. Because I'm mostly paying attention about used bookstore, and I can donate books and get more books, and the books I donate will count to how much money I can get. Will go to the price of the books I buy there. Okay, so from what I know about this is basically about this young man who has a very good relationship with his mother because his dad sucks, and he wants a wife that is just like his mother, that reminds him of his mother, that has the same way of thinking, ideals and stuff, I guess. And actually, what got me thinking about deciding to get around to this book this year is actually because we were talking about that at the dinner table. I was talking about that with my parents, because it's just there aren't quite a lot of people, but there are a few people in the world, a few males who have had relationships with their mothers that are a bit interesting, and the whole idea of, like, is it, like, how intimate is too intimate with the relationship between a mother and a son? And is it an appropriate relationship? And how a lot of times when boys grow up to be young men, they don't want to be intimate with their mother. Like, when they get married, they are separating from their mothers, and it's inappropriate for them to be, because they think of intimacy as romantic and sexual, and it's like, that's just disturbing to think about your mother in that way, because who would do that? I mean, it's it's like automatic. But there are some I have seen, like, sons, whether in fiction or real life, who have complicated relationship with their mother, and their mom just doesn't want to let go of them. So I feel like this is going to be very interesting to read. I mean, I don't know what kind of person the mom will be, but I'll be very interested. And the next one is my first Wilkie Collins I have here, The Woman in White. And I think it's supposed to be it's supposed to be a ghost story. I've been wanting to read more ghost stories. So I'm starting with The Haunting of Hill House, and this one, The Woman in White, I believe is a ghost story. And a lot of, I think it's Jennifer Brooks. Yeah, I think it's Jennifer Brooks who talks about how she either likes this one's her favorite, or The Moonstone is her favorite by Wilkie Collins. I mean, I think it might be this one is her favorite. So I saw this. I don't know if I saw this at Givens or I bought this at Books A Million. I think I bought it at Books A Million. Yeah, I think I bought it there. And I always get this one mixed up with The Woman in Black, which is not by Wilkie Collins, but the titles are similar. It's just switching white to black. the word black, the color black. Okay, these are the last set of books. Okay, so next is The Picture of Dorian Gray. This is a book that I've already read. I did a bunny read with my best friend Therese. I was going to say Terry. Well, actually, her name is Terry, but I do call her Terry. But you guys might get confused because I talk about the other Terry so much, and I refer to her as Terry. So when I'm talking about the other one, I'll say Therese. So we read this, and at the time, I was like, oh, it's kind of cool, kind of interesting, but at the time, was not my cup of tea. But years later, I really participated thoroughly in Victober, and I'll have to end this soon. The good news is I'm almost done with it, so I can plug it in. The thing is, there is a plug over there, but I don't know if it will. Because yesterday I had a little trouble with the internet calling it up when I had my computer over here. So I don't know if it will give me. But I have a plug right there, so I'll try it. See what happens. If not, I'll have to. Okay, I'm shut up now. And so I read for Victober, the group read were two of Oscar Wilde's plays, A Woman of No Importance and The Importance of Being Earnest. I was already vaguely familiar with The Importance of Being Earnest. I enjoy both of them, so I decided, I'm going to give Oscar Wilde another chance and get some more of his stuff. And I unfortunately got rid of my other copy of The Picture of Dorian Gray, which was a bind-up of some of his other novellas. And I kind of regretted that now that I've read some of his plays and I really liked them. So I saw this one at Gibbons, and I decided to go ahead and grab it and buy it. This is one of the few times I've bought a book that I've already read. I mean, it did help that it was cheap. Although, it's only $4.95 in this edition if I got it at, like, Barnes & Noble or Books A Million. Although, I think this is you only get these at Barnes & Noble, so. Unfortunately, we don't have a Barnes & Noble that's close to us. So, I bought it, but I ended up buying this. And in case you don't know, this is basically about this young man, who's told by this artist while he's painting his portrait, that he's really beautiful and good looking, and it's too bad that he will grow old and not look this way forever. And he kind of makes a Faustian deal unconsciously, and instead of him aging, his picture ages as his life progresses and as he does all these things in his life that aren't necessarily morally good. And he is influenced not just by the guy who painted him, Basil, painted his portrait, but also this other guy who was a bad influence on him. So maybe I'll like it better now that I'm a little older. Okay, so almost done. Okay, so next is... Okay, so actually, no, I don't think I have that one next. I think that one's right. Okay, next is... let me go ahead and show you. Okay, another Russian classics by Tolstoy, the same guy who wrote War and Peace. This is, I love the way this one smells. Anna Karenina. And basically about this woman who marries this prince, but then she has an affair with this, I don't know if he's a peasant or lesser noble or something, but it's all about that. So it's a tragic love story set in Russia, that's all I know. And it got really popular because in the mid-2000s, I believe, or late 2000s, I believe that it got really popular because there was a movie version that came out starring Keira Knightley and Jude Law, and I don't know who else was in it, but although I don't know how beloved that version is because, of course, it probably shortened quite a bit, and they had to take out a lot of stuff. But yeah, I like, again, another situation where it's a vintage edition. which I really like. Not vintage as in it's literally vintage. Not because there are vintage, there are editions of classics that are called, the publication is Vintage Publications, I believe. This is actually Penguin Classics, and there's a dinosaur stamp in it. If you can't see it, I'm not covering. I thought that was funny. And on this extra paper is the biography of Tolstoy, a little bit mini biography of it. And then next is Vanity Fair, which is apparently the British version. The British version of Gone with the Wind. So again, another vintage book, and I really like it. I just love vintage books that actually look vintage. And I don't know about this. I just know that the main character's name is Becky Sharp, and like I said, it's basically the British version of Gone with the Wind. So, okay, I got 2 more to go, and then I'm done, and I can charge my computer. Okay, so, okay, next is, so I already have a bind-up of Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes stories. I have 2 volumes, but it's kind of hard to read with those and travel with those. So finally, I decided to get this paperback edition of his novel, Sherlock Holmes, The Hound of Baskervilles. And I believe this is about a haunted house, or like there's a dog that people believe is a werewolf. And of course, this is Sherlock Holmes, so there's a logical explanation. Maybe like the dog has rabies or something. Which it's weird because most of the time I don't like books that it turns out like it seems like there's something supernatural going on, but then it's revealed, oh no, it's a guy in a mask. But I like Sherlock Holmes. I've always been a fan of Sherlock Holmes, especially because Robert Downey Jr. played him in the movie. That is actually that, along with The Great Mouse Detective, a Disney movie where based kind of on Sherlock Holmes, except for they're dealing with mice as the main characters. And so because of that, and then Robert Downey Jr. playing him in the movie, I've always kind of been interested in Sherlock Holmes. So, and I figured that reading this one and this edition would help make it a little bit easier to read. So, and last but not least is one that is more of an obscure classic. I don't know if it's considered a modern classic, but well, I guess it is because it's from the Modern Library. The Magnificent Ambersons. Oh, well, yep, best novels of the 20th century. And I believe it's a family saga. As soon as I read the back description and it said family saga, I was like, oh, I'm going to jump on that. I've always been a sucker for family saga stories. Yeah, it's in 1918, so I think it's a modern classic, or just towards the end of the classics and going into the modern classics. Because it's early 1900s. Yep, it's the changing fortunes of 3 generations of an American dynasty. So, it just sounded really interesting, like I said. Family drama and family dynasties and family sagas always have intrigued me. Because family drama is so interesting. Now, which, by the way, I do not recommend Schitt's Creek to me. You know, I keep seeing commercials for that show, and it's like, I don't care. Like, I like reading the family sagas, and I know that's about our family, but a family is, you know, a rich family or whatever, but I don't care. So, don't recommend that show to me. I know a lot of people like it, and I keep seeing, the reason why I say it is because I've been watching, I've been recording Ghost Whisperer on Pop, on the channel Pop, and it's been showing it keeps showing previews of that show, Schitt's Creek, and it's like, I don't care, I'm tired of seeing that, so I keep fast forwarding through the commercials because it's DVR'd, so I can do that, but I keep seeing it because it's the last season apparently, and Reagan from Peruse Project has mentioned the show and talked how great it is. I just don't care, so I only say it because it looks like it's a show about a family and family drama, but kind of a dark comedy type. But anyway, okay, now I'm done, and I gotta charge my computer. I gotta plug it back in, so if you guys like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and click subscribe if you have not already and you like this video. I hope you are enjoying your reading. If there's any classics that you want to prioritize this year, feel free to share in the comments below, and I will talk to y'all later. Alright, bye!